Hi, we're going to discuss motor and mind. We will start with an overview of motor development, then discuss manual development and posture and balance. Then in the next video, we'll discuss locomotion and toys. And in each case, we will discuss how these movement-related skills, these motor skills, connect to psychological development. In our last class, we saw that babies know a lot more than anyone ever realized. The world makes much more sense to them than the blooming, buzzing confusion they were once thought to experience. But as we discussed, that fragile early knowledge does not always translate into actual behaviors in the world. Piaget was right that active physical exploration is a powerful mechanism for promoting psychological development, and that includes mastery of cognitive skills like object permanence, as well as linguistic, emotional, and social skills. So here's how I'd like you to begin. I'd like you to imagine riding a bike. Imagine every muscle, every movement, every feeling, everything you need to see or hear, and list at least 5 motor and other skills. So, pause, take a moment to reflect, and then when you're ready to begin, press play. Okay, so motor skills are those voluntary movement skills, and riding a bike is more than just riding a bike. You know, it involves a lot of component skills. So pedaling, that movement, coordinating one leg with the other leg. So pedaling, but it's not just pedaling. There's posture and balance. There's steering, so that's going to involve the arms. And even grasping the handlebars involves the hands. If there's a bell or brakes or something like that on the handlebars, then that may even involve specifically the fingers moving individually. Okay? Then there might be standing on the pedals versus sitting on the seat, and being able to move in those positions will vary. All right? There's the motivation involved. So this is not a motor skill, but there's these other skills. There's the motivation to see where you're going and go, right? Knowing where and when you're going to be moving. There's the visual and auditory skills, being able to coordinate what you see with what you hear, viewing yourself in depth, and being able to target yourself toward a destination in depth. So there's other skills as well, but the point is that riding a bike isn't just one skill. It's a whole bunch of skills that get intertwined, and depending on the environment, whether you're on a flat surface or a hilly surface or a curved surface, right? Those skills have to be combined in different ways. It's complicated, okay? How might a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old differ? Well, generally a 9-year-old's probably going to be much better at riding a bike than a 3-year-old. They're going to have each of those individual component skills better developed, and they're also probably going to be better at coordinating those component skills. So just using posture and balance as an example, a 9-year-old's probably going to be better than the 3-year-old, and the 3-year-old may need training wheels to help them maintain that balance. Whereas a 9-year-old, especially if they have experience on the bike, they probably don't need training wheels. Okay? So let's talk a little bit more about what motor development is in general, and then we'll look at some specific examples. So there are 2 main branches of motor development. So motor development in general is voluntary movement. And gross motor development is going to refer to movement of the large muscles in the body. So within the legs and the arms and shoulders and torso. So being able to walk and jump and sit up straight and throw in terms of the movement of the shoulder and the big muscles in the arms, okay? Fine motor skills are going to involve the movements of small muscles in the hands and fingers as well as in the face. And very often when we talk about fine motor skills, we're just talking about, movements of the hands. And so examples of that would be being able to pick up a small item off of a table with your fingers, being able to write with a pencil, those kinds of things, okay? In general, gross motor skills are mastered earlier than fine motor skills, so you can probably imagine a 2 or a 3-year-old running across a field just fine, and yet not being able to control a pencil as they're trying to draw a picture, okay? Milestones refer to the typical ages when skills emerge, and we are talking about age ranges. There's not just a specific point in time where all children develop skills. There's a range, and so long as a child is in that broad range, they are fine. Development is not a race. So developing certain motor skills sooner rather than later, it doesn't matter, okay? So long as a child is within that range, they're developing in a perfectly typical way. And it's not just biological maturation. In other words, these motor skills are not just under the control of some genetic blueprint and they just unfold over time on a schedule. What is a better way to think about motor development is a dynamic systems approach. And that is what I was kind of getting at with that reflection a moment ago. Our bodies teach themselves to move, and there's different routes to the same skills, and we integrate a variety of component skills, individual skills come together to create these more complicated skills. And I'm going to show you a quick video clip here. As you're watching, be thinking, what are some surprising motor skills of newborns? And in the clip with the bouncer, what is happening?
It's a question that has intrigued scientists for at least 60 years, since this 3-month-old was filmed learning to sit, then 3 months later to crawl, and at 9 months, take his first supported steps. The film was made by psychologist Myrtle McGraw, who in the 1930s did some startling experiments, like dunking a 2-week-old in a pool to see if he could swim. Luckily, he could. Her most famous experiment was with these twins, Jimmy on the left and Johnny on the right. Johnny was given some unusual opportunities. Introduced to roller skates at 13 months, he was soon an expert. Johnny's physical training continued as he grew older, and he outperformed his untrained twin on tests of physical strength and agility. But on the basics, sitting, crawling, walking, Johnny didn't develop any better or more quickly than Jimmy.
Why don't you bring Matthew in? And we want to...
Myrtle McGraw's research inspired generations of psychologists to try to find out how much of a baby's physical development is inborn and how much comes from on-the-job training.
There you go. And we're going to prime the pump a little bit here and see if we can give him the idea that he can bounce in this.
I recently visited one of these psychologists, Harvard's Gene Goldfield, on the day he was meeting 6-month-old Matthew.
Oops.
You're supposed to bounce, not fly.
They don't know what to do in this situation. There are no instructions. There is no instructor. And so what do? Well, you do whatever you have available. And what babies have available is that they can kick and look and listen and feel.
Now, Matthew certainly isn't genetically programmed to operate a baby bouncer.
And bounce.
And in this first encounter, he didn't discover its secret.
When you step off the edge of the earth like that, it's hard.
On her first try, 6-month-old Eve didn't get very far either. But by the time of my visit 10 days later...
Wait a minute. This is contagious. I like this. You're right.
Eve's feet and legs have now figured out for themselves exactly when and how hard to kick to get the bouncer bouncing. Eve herself is just having fun.
Clearly what she's doing is paying attention to the fact that something that she's doing is producing some effect. And it's very motivating.
She discovers video.
Eve's brain isn't figuring out the physics of the bouncer. It's just enjoying the result. Nor have her genes programmed her to bounce. What's happened is that her legs have discovered for themselves just what to do.
That's great, isn't it?
Okay, so newborns can do a lot of interesting things that come in as inborn reflexes that are individual component skills that don't necessarily get combined with other skills until much later because the muscles aren't developed and so forth. But swimming is one of the things you may have noticed. They actually will coordinate their arms and legs, even at birth. In the clip with the bouncer, what you could see is that those babies were not genetically programmed to operate a bouncer, and yet their legs figured out just how hard and how much and all of that. They figured out how to use it, okay? So manual development is gaining control of the hands, and it is a long, slow, continuous process. So first babies start to swipe, and then they start to kind of grasp, and then they get good at grasping, and then they grasp with, they grasp with both hands, and then they grasp with one hand, and then they can use their fingers. It's a long process. But basically, in terms of being able to see something they want and then reach and grasp it reasonably well, that tends to occur between about 4 and 5 months. Before that, they just can't control their arms well enough to do that. And then they get better and better and better over time. And this fundamentally changes the ways that babies learn about and understand the world, because until then, they are completely unable to move their bodies in ways that can be coordinated with getting things in the environment. So they may see something they want, but they can't get it. But once you can reach and grasp, you can grab things and bring them up to your face and put them in your mouth. Look at them closely, manipulate them, right? And so that fundamentally changes the way they're able to explore the world. Posture and balance are also really important. So you can see in this figure on the screen, there's a whole series of gross motor skills that occur. Posture and balance stuff is at the beginning of this. And so rolling over is between 4 and 5 months, just like reaching and grasping. And then sitting without support is typically around 6 months or so. And that fundamentally changes the way the baby learns about and understands the world too, because now not only can the baby reach and grasp something and bring it up to their face and explore it, but they're able to sit on their own. And so they're able to bend over and reach and grasp things. They're able to move their bodies, like the gross motor stuff, the posture stuff. They're able to move and coordinate that with the reaching and grasping, which gives them even more freedom. As we'll talk about in the next video, locomotion is being able to move themselves across a room, and that's going to involve a huge burst of psychological development. Okay? Thank you.